King Charles had opened thousands of royal documents, but nothing had prepared him for the final decree bearing his mother's private seal. One sentence changed the atmosphere inside the palace. Queen Elizabeth had not entrusted the protection of the crown's historic legacy to her eldest son. She had named Princess Anne as its only true guardian. Charles stopped reading, lowered the pages, and stared across the room as the meaning of her decision struck him. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles remained motionless inside his Buckingham Palace study, the private working room where the monarch handled family matters privately. A sealed archival file lay open before him. His mother had ordered it locked until a fixed date, preventing anyone from touching it early. That restriction made the file extraordinary. Its contents made it devastating. The decree reached far beyond jewelry. The royal decree was a formal written command carrying the sovereign's authority. And this one governed archives, heirlooms, correspondence, regalia, family records, and traditions. These were not ordinary possessions. They carried the memory of earlier reigns and would shape the identity of those still to come. Charles read the decisive paragraph again. The Queen's secret decree named Anne sole guardian of the crown's historical legacy, granting her final protective authority over its archives, heirlooms, private records, and ceremonial continuity. His fingers tightened around the pages. He looked toward the private secretary and asked whether the wording could truly mean what it appeared to mean. The secretary did not soften the answer. The king still possessed the throne, yet his mother had separated sovereign power from moral guardianship. She had trusted her daughter to protect what even a reigning monarch might endanger. That distinction cut deeper than public criticism, because it came from the woman whose approval he had pursued for a lifetime. Charles turned to the final sheet and found a sentence written in her own hand. "Guardian," she declared, "must be capable of resisting the sovereign whenever the crown's permanent interests were threatened." Beneath it stood signatures from years earlier, followed by later confirmations. This was no frightened decision made during illness. She had considered it, defended it, and renewed it. Charles asked who already knew. The secretary hesitated, then revealed that Anne had been summoned to Windsor and had arrived carrying her sealed copy. As footsteps approached the study door, the decree ceased to be a private wound between a son and his mother. It was becoming a confrontation between the king and the sister she had trusted above everyone else. The throne had always belonged to Charles, but trust had never followed the rules of succession. While he spent a lifetime preparing to reign, Anne built her reputation without demanding applause, favor, or elevation. Now the Queen's final judgment had placed them on opposite sides of a painful divide. One sibling possessed the crown. The other had been entrusted with protecting what the crown could never replace. Neither could escape what that distinction revealed about them. Charles had been shaped for kingship from childhood. Every duty pointed toward the day he would inherit the throne. Succession meant the legal order determining who becomes monarch, and it had always placed him first. Yet Anne followed another path. She worked without chasing constitutional power, accepted difficult assignments, and earned respect without seeking attention or reward. Anne shared something with Queen Elizabeth few could match: discipline without performance. Monarch trusted her daughter because she spoke plainly when courtiers softened the truth. She valued tradition, understood duty, and never confused loyalty with silence. Their bond grew through service, conversations, and difficult decisions made without praise. Charles remembered those moments now. His mother had praised Anne's reliability, then questioned his plans for modernizing royal customs. He had treated those exchanges as ordinary disagreement. Now they felt like warnings he had failed to recognize. Each compliment given to his sister seemed to carry a judgment he had never understood. Anne waited alone in the adjoining room, gripping her sealed copy of the decree. She felt no victory. The responsibility frightened her, because accepting it could change her relationship with Meek, her brother, forever. A guardian, in this decree, meant the person with final protective authority over the crown's historic legacy. The document named no equal beside her, not William, Camilla, Edward, or any counsel. Anne opened the private letter attached to her copy and read the Queen's words again. Her role, her mother had written, was a burden that might require its holder to stand alone, even before the sovereign. She understood the warning. Competing family interests could weaken the decree, so the monarch had concentrated responsibility in one pair of hands. A courtier entered and told Anne that Charles was ready. She rose, smoothed the envelope, and asked, "Has he read the final page?" The courtier said nothing. His silence answered her. Anne then learned that the decree recorded earlier decisions that had convinced the Queen protection was necessary. One incident concerned Charles directly. To understand why a mother had divided royal authority from royal guardianship, brother and sister would have to return to the moment when she first feared the crown's legacy could be altered from within her own family. The decree had not emerged from vague suspicion or distant anxiety. It was born from one unforgettable confrontation at Windsor Castle. Years earlier, Queen Elizabeth entered a private archive room and discovered that a selection of family letters, ceremonial records, and disputed heirlooms had been prepared for reassignment without her final consent. Charles believed he was simplifying an outdated system. His mother saw something more dangerous, the beginning of a future in which convenience could erase memory, ownership, and royal obligation. Charles had long believed the monarchy needed careful modernization. Private collections, royal residences, archives, and inherited objects had passed through generations under rules that were often unclear. An archive was a protected collection of historic documents and records, while ceremonial heirlooms were objects preserved because of their connection to royal duty. To him, clearer management meant stronger protection. To the Queen, it risked turning sacred history into property that could be moved whenever administration demanded it. Breaking point came during the Windsor Archive reassignment meeting, held privately as preparations for the Platinum Jubilee gathered pace. The celebration marked 70 years of the monarch's reign, but behind the public honor, Charles had authorized aides to prepare a transfer schedule for historic correspondence and several ceremonial pieces. He believed the plan would simplify ownership, access, and preservation. His mother had never given final approval. Queen Elizabeth entered without warning and found sealed cases marked for movement. She lifted one file and immediately recognized her father's wartime letters. Those pages carried the private fears and decisions of George VI during Britain's darkest years. She turned to Charles and asked why her permission had not been requested. Charles kept his voice calm. He explained that the material was not being discarded, only reorganized under a modern system. King-in-waiting insisted that better control would prevent loss and confusion. His mother did not raise her voice. She simply told him that protection without consent could become possession, and possession could slowly erase the duty attached to memory. Anne witnessed the exchange from across the room. She watched the Queen's disappointment deepen when her brother defended the schedule. The princess had already challenged several palace administrators about the planned transfer, and now her warning stood between mother and son. Charles left believing the disagreement would pass. The Queen asked Anne to remain. With no aides present, she admitted that a monarch could become too attached to personal plans to recognize when preservation was being compromised. That evening, she summoned her private solicitor and dictated the first version of the secret and guardianship decree. Anne tried to refuse. She warned that naming her would wound Charles and divide the family. The Queen closed the archive case herself and answered that avoiding pain was not the same as protecting the crown. Now, years later, Charles discovered that every detail had been recorded, including a judgment about his conduct that he believed Anne should have urged their mother to remove. When she finally entered his study, the sealed decree lay between them, and so did the memory of Windsor, ready to turn years of buried hurt into a confrontation neither sibling could escape. Charles did not greet Anne as a king receiving a royal advisor. He faced her as a son who believed his own mother had delivered a final judgment against him. The decree rested on the desk between them, its seal broken, and its meaning undeniable. Anne remained standing. Charles did not offer her a chair. Then, in a voice stripped of ceremony, he asked the question that had been burning through him. "Did you know she chose you over me?" The closed study left them nowhere to hide. No other family member was present, and the private secretary waited outside, under strict orders not to enter. The decree operated through a private family trust, an arrangement that placed protected property and records under named custodians, rather than one person's unrestricted control. Archived instructions, repeated signatures, and the Queen's written confirmations meant Charles could not simply cancel it with a command. Charles accused Anne of allowing their mother to turn private doubt into permanent judgment. He believed she should have warned him, challenged the decision, or refused a responsibility that questioned his ability to protect the monarchy. Every word carried years of buried hurt. He had waited his entire life to inherit the crown, only to discover that the woman who prepared for it had placed its deepest memory in someone else's hands. Anne refused to call it betrayal. She told him she had never asked for the role and had spent years hoping the sealed instructions would never be activated. The princess had understood what acceptance might cost. She could lose her brother's trust while carrying a burden she had never wanted. Charles pushed the decree across the desk. Anne did not touch it. "Do you believe I am unfit to protect our mother's legacy?" he demanded. She chose every word carefully. "This was not a decision about your fitness to reign. It was about what must survive every reign." The answer struck harder than an accusation. Anne then disclosed, through the documented letter attached to her copy, that the Queen had amended the decree after another private dispute. That disagreement concerned proposals to expand family access to historically restricted, royal objects, items kept apart because their meaning belonged to the institution, not to individual relatives. Charles demanded names. He wanted to know whose access had alarmed their mother, and which objects had caused the amendment. Anne told him the protected appendix, a sealed list containing sensitive names and items, could be opened only by the guardian, alongside the designated archival trustee. The king struck the desk with his palm. The blow was not violent, but the pen beside the decree rolled to the floor. Neither sibling moved to retrieve it. Charles warned that he would summon the trustees and challenge every boundary placed around her authority. Anne held his stare and answered quietly. They had already been called, and each one recognized her appointment. Charles had expected a painful family dispute. What awaited him instead was a system of authority that even the sovereign could not command into submission. The true shock was not that Anne had received a ceremonial honor. The shock was that the Queen had built a protective structure around her decision. Signatures, trustees, sealed inventories, and private instructions formed a wall between the king and the legacy he believed naturally followed the crown. Charles could still reign, appoint, advise, and command. But within this guarded domain, Anne possessed something he did not: the authority to say no, and to make that refusal endure. Charles entered the trustees' meeting, expecting clarification. Instead, he found resistance arranged with legal precision. The Crown Legacy Trust was a private protective system created to keep historically sensitive materials beyond the unrestricted control of any one monarch or royal household. That mattered because a future sovereign could change policy, favor one branch of the family, or move objects whose meaning belonged to the monarchy as a whole. Anne sat opposite him, carrying authority she had never wanted. The decree allowed her to approve access to protected archives, block the permanent reassignment of designated heirlooms, review exhibitions and loans, and preserve ceremonial traditions recorded in the Queen's schedules. Those schedules were written instructions explaining how important royal objects and customs should be handled across future reigns. Charles remained at the head of the table, yet each answer made him appear more isolated. One custodian confirmed the signatures. Another confirmed the archived instructions. A third stated that Anne held the final protective voice whenever the trust's permanent interests were threatened. The king listened as his own authority narrowed inside a room where everyone still addressed him as sovereign. Charles asked whether his mother had understood how the arrangement would look. Had she known it could make her son appear distrusted during his own reign? No one answered quickly. That silence cut deeper than denial. Anne felt every glance turned toward her. She knew that defending the decree too fiercely could resemble ambition, yet weakening it would betray the promise she had made to the queen. The princess spoke carefully, insisting that the trust did not exist to embarrass Charles. It existed because memory could be damaged by decisions that seemed harmless in the moment. The lead trustee then produced a sealed schedule, listed documents, and objects that could not be transferred, gifted, relabeled, or placed under another household's control without Anne's written approval. Among them were the Queen's private diaries, key family correspondence, disputed historic jewels, residence records, and ceremonial pieces reserved for future heirs. Charles reached for the schedule. The trustee placed one hand over it and explained that the king could inspect the list only with Anne present. Charles slowly withdrew his hand. She looked away, unable to hide the pain of seeing her brother restrained by their mother's command. The final clause changed everything. It gave the guardian power to suspend any active palace decision threatening the protected legacy. Anne was then informed that one such decision was already underway. Before Charles could recover, his sister faced her first test: stop an order carrying the king's approval, or prove that the queen's decree had no strength at all. The decree became real the moment Anne used it. A planned transfer of historic correspondence and several ceremonial objects had already received preliminary approval for relocation into a newly reorganized royal collection. Charles considered it responsible administration. Anne saw that the transfer would remove the material from the safeguards named by their mother. Before sunset, she placed her signature beneath a single sentence, suspending the order, and the machinery of the palace stopped around her. Charles had approved the transfer as part of a modern household management program. The system was designed to bring scattered royal collections under clearer control, making exhibitions, conservation, and authorized family access easier to manage. To the king, consolidation meant order. To his sister, it created the same danger their mother had once recognized. Protected history would quietly pass from permanent guardianship into the control of a single household. Anne did not claim the objects for herself. Her suspension froze every movement until the Crown Legacy Trust, the protective body overseeing restricted royal material, could decide whether the transfer violated the Queen's many written safeguards. That distinction mattered. She was not taking power from Charles for personal gain. She was forcing his decision to face the test their mother had created. Charles received the notice during an evening briefing. He dismissed his aides, read the sentence twice, and fixed his attention on Anne's signature. His own sister had formally blocked an order issued under his reign. The king did not tear the paper or summon anyone back. He simply remained seated as the private wound became an active limit on his authority. Camilla found Charles alone after the briefing. The queen consort asked what had happened, and he handed her the notice without explanation. When she finished reading, he admitted that the decree had changed everything. His mother's judgment was no longer confined to one sealed document. It could now interrupt his decisions, delay his plans, and follow him through every future dispute. Anne reached the archive corridor before the sealed case could be removed. Staff members stopped as she checked its inventory number and placed one hand on the handle. She ordered it returned to the secured room immediately. The discovery inside carried a cruel precision. The case contained correspondence connected to the Windsor Archive reassignment meeting, the confrontation that had caused the Queen to create the decree. Attached to the file was a private note Anne had never seen. Her mother instructed her to show the material to Charles only if he attempted to repeat the original transfer. Charles learned that the case had been returned. He walked to the window, removed his glasses, and felt his anger collapse into grief. The Queen had predicted this moment. She had expected him to repeat the choice that first frightened her. Charles chose not to challenge Anne publicly. Instead, he wrote a short message asking her to meet him at Windsor, without secretaries, trustees, or legal papers. The struggle had begun as a contest over authority. His invitation carried no command and no royal seal. It was the request of a brother finally prepared to ask what his mother had been trying to tell him. At Windsor, there was no long table, no legal advisor, and no throne room distance. Charles and Anne sat opposite each other in the small private room where their mother had once with each other, taken tea after exhausting public duties. For the first time since the decree was opened, Neither spoke as monarch nor guardian. Charles placed the Queen's Wilm's handwritten note between them, and admitted what anger had prevented him from saying. He did not fear losing authority. He feared losing his mother's faith. Charles had arrived first, and removed the decree from its official folder. The royal instrument was a formal document carrying institutional authority. He refused to treat it that way now. He placed the pages on the table as a family record, stripped of seals, titles, and ceremony. That choice mattered because the dispute had never truly been about paperwork. It was about a son who felt judged, and a daughter burdened by the judgment. Anne listened without interrupting. She explained that the Queen had not created the guardianship role because she believed Charles would destroy the monarchy. Her mother had believed every sovereign needed one person empowered to protect continuity from pressure, haste, and emotion. Continuity meant preserving the customs, records, and obligations that must survive beyond any single reign. Even a well-intentioned monarch could make a decision that could not be reversed. Charles admitted that he had spent his life waiting to prove himself. The decree felt like a verdict, delivered after the one person he wanted to answer was gone. He could not defend his choices to his mother, ask what might have changed her mind, or hear whether she still believed in him. That helplessness had turned grief into anger. Anne lowered her voice and confessed that being chosen had brought guilt, not pride. She had feared her brother would see a rival where none existed. The princess had never wanted to stand above him. She had understood her role as protecting both the institution he carried and the man carrying it. Charles asked the question neither had avoided. Would she truly stand against him again? Anne answered yes. Then she reached across the table and added that she would also stand beside him whenever the crown came under threat. Anne opened the hidden note recovered from the archive case. The Queen had written that the guardian was selected not to weaken the sovereign, but to ensure that no monarch faced an irreversible decision alone. Her final sentence addressed Charles directly. She believed he would eventually understand that love sometimes required resistance rather than obedience. Charles folded the note slowly and returned it to Anne, instead of claiming it. He accepted that the guardianship belonged to her, but asked that future disputes begin with conversation, rather than sealed objections. She agreed. Their understanding remained private. News of the decree had already escaped the palace. By the time Charles and Anne left Windsor together, the Queen's decision was becoming a national judgment on the monarchy itself. The story reached the public before the palace could shape it. By dawn, the Queen's private decree had escaped the language of trusts and archives and become something far more explosive, a mother's final choice between her children. Some saw Anne's appointment as the ultimate tribute to duty. Others saw a deliberate humiliation of the king. Outside the palace gates, cameras gathered, commentators argued, and one newspaper front page transformed a private family reckoning into a national spectacle. Palace officials rushed out a controlled statement describing Anne's appointment as a continuity arrangement created by the late Queen to preserve historic royal material. Continuity arrangement was a protective plan designed to keep important records, traditions, and heirlooms secure across different reigns. The wording was calm, almost bloodless, yet it could not hide the brutal symbolism the public had already understood. Charles had inherited the throne, while his sister had inherited their mother's deepest trust. London Chronicle captured that divide with devastating force. Its fictional front page placed Charles and Anne in separate formal portraits beneath one enormous headline. The crown is his, but the Queen's trust is hers. The words spread across broadcasts within minutes. What had begun as a sealed family decision now looked like a final comparison between the monarch and the sister who had been chosen to restrain him. Outside Buckingham Palace, the reaction became deeply personal. An elderly woman placed flowers beside a photograph of Queen Elizabeth and told a live broadcaster she knew which child would never put themselves before duty. The comment traveled quickly, repeated by presenters who treated it as the voice of national feeling. Yet for Charles, it sounded like another public verdict he had never been allowed to answer. Charles watched the coverage from a private sitting room and flinched when commentators called the decree a rebuke of his reign. The king had accepted Anne's authority in private, But the country was turning that acceptance into humiliation. Every headline reduced a painful family understanding to victory and defeat. Anne rejected advice to appear before cameras. The princess insisted that any triumphant gesture would betray the responsibility she had received. She had not defeated her brother. She had accepted a burden meant to protect him, even if the public refused to see the difference. A senior palace representative finally confirmed during a televised briefing that Charles accepted both the legal and moral standing of the decree. That statement ended speculation that he intended to overturn it. It also forced the monarch toward a greater public decision. William telephoned Anne privately and thanked her for protecting records that would one day shape his responsibilities. She warned the future king that guardianship was not about inheritance, it was about restraint. Charles then approved revised wording, declaring Anne's role an expression of shared duty, not divided loyalty. The headlines had framed the decree as a choice between them. The final truth now depended on whether he would carry his mother's judgment as humiliation or transform it into the defining act of his reign. Charles could not change what his mother had written. He could decide what her words would make of him. The decree had shaken his confidence, reopened old wounds, and placed his sister in a position no royal sibling expected to occupy. Yet its final meaning was not that the queen loved one child more or trusted one child less. It was that the crown remained safest when someone loyal enough to defend it was brave enough to resist it. Charles had first received the decree as rejection. Anne had accepted it as a painful obligation. The palace had treated it as a constitutional disturbance, meaning a challenge to royal authority, before anyone understood its purpose. The queen had separated possession from stewardship. Her son kept the throne, while her daughter protected records, heirlooms, traditions, and principles no reign should reshape for convenience. Charles summoned Anne to a gathering at Windsor. William, Edward, and household representatives watched as the king placed the original decree on the table and turned it toward his sister. He would honor their mother's decision without challenge. Anne accepted the responsibility, but refused the language of victory. The princess told Charles she would serve as guardian in cooperation with him, never in competition. Her role was not to stand above the monarch. It was to stand between permanent history and temporary pressure. Charles later apologized privately for accusing Anne of betrayal. He admitted that grief had made resistance look like disloyalty. She answered that his anger had been human, but his acceptance proved he understood the difference between being obeyed and being protected. The decision became final. The suspended archive transfer was canceled. Protected correspondence and ceremonial objects remained under the Crown Legacy Trust, a safeguard controlling how historic royal material could be accessed or moved. Anne's approval would govern that protection, while reviews would be carried out jointly with the sovereign. Palace officials adopted a new rule. Any permanent change to the protected legacy would require consultation between the monarch, guardian, and the future heir. William would inherit responsibility and a warning. Power without restraint could endanger the history it claimed to preserve. The decree did not weaken Charles. It strengthened him by forcing him to accept limits without surrendering dignity. Anne did not become a rival queen or hidden ruler. She became the shield their mother intended. Queen Elizabeth's final judgment wounded Charles before it guided him, burdened Anne before it honored her, and left the monarchy with one lasting verdict. Crown may belong to the sovereign, but its legacy belongs to those strong enough to protect it from everyone, including the sovereign himself. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.